Your Honor?
Thank you.
I'm going to object that the questions have become cumulative and there's no foundation for it to go any further.
Your microphone is off, sir.
It's beyond the scope, and this is not a character witness.
I don't recall which question he's referring to.
I'm looking for it myself. I don't have a question.
Would you like me to read the last question, Judge?
I'm prepared to start with a new question.
All right.
Mr. Robson, the 3 books that are in front of you that you've already taken a look at, I'd like to go back over the inscription that 842 is a book, and you were asked to read that inscription out loud. Take a look at that inscription again, would you, please?
Do you want me to read it again?
No, you don't need to read it again. Go to the last word, which is the name. What is the name on that?
Rhonda.
Notice anything unusual about the name?
No.
Do you notice it's written with quotations on both sides of it?
Yes.
Doesn't that usually mean that that's not the name when somebody writes it in quotation marks?
Not that I know of.
Have you ever written your name in quotation marks?
No.
That's actually from somebody who's not named Rhonda, right?
Objection. Calls for speculation.
Sustained.
The 3 books I've given you so far to take a look at, they all feature either boys or adult men, predominantly nude, and the one on adult men is engaged in sex acts. Is that correct?
I'm going to object. Asked and answered. This is cumulative.
Overruled.
I'm going to show you 3 additional books now, if I could. Let's start with Exhibit 578, if you'll take a look at that one, please.
Same objection. Cumulative. It's not character. It's beyond the scope.
Overruled.
I'll start with the first picture. What do you see right there?
I see in the center of the picture, it's a drawing. And there's a naked man with his genitalia exposed, and there's kangaroos on either side.
Okay, go ahead and proceed. You can keep going. Just keep going through it. You can stop. What you've seen so far are all pictures of naked men, is that right?
Yes.
And pictures with their genitalia prominently displayed, is that correct?
Yes.
Some of these are bondage pictures, are they not?
Objection. Leading.
It's cross-examination, Your Honor.
Assumes facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
Is that correct? Like that picture right there?
Yes.
Would you consider this to be homoerotic material?
Yes.
Exhibit number 590B, take a look at that, please. Tell us the title.
Before the Hand of Man.
Go ahead and take a look at the content of that book. That's enough. Pictures of naked young men, is that correct?
Yes.
Would you consider that to be homoerotic material?
No.
Why not?
I look at this more as sort of, it's about the photography and it's more of an art book, to me.
Do you think it's the background setting that makes it unique?
Unique?
Well, they're all naked men in it, is that right?
Yes.
Look at number 599, if you would. You can stop. Those are all pictures of boys and men, all nude, is that correct?
I didn't see any boys. I saw men.
How old do you think is the youngest person you've seen in this book so far?
Maybe 19, 18, 19.
Teenaged?
Yeah.
Okay. They're all about that age or a little bit older, is that right?
Yeah.
Do you think this person is 19?
18, 19, yeah.
Okay. And in fact, in each one of them, genitalia is prominently displayed, is that correct?
Yes.
Take a look at this book, please, number 590A. You can stop here. What are you taking a look at? Particularly the page you're focused on at the moment. What do you see?
There's 2 naked men and it looks like they're about to kiss each other.
In this book, in fact, each of the pictures depict 2 naked men, is that right?
Yes.
And in each instance, both of them are doing something with one another of a sexual nature, is that right?
No.
They're hugging, they're touching, they're caressing?
They're posing.
They're posing. And they're all naked?
Yes.
Would you consider this to be homoerotic art?
Mind if I look a little more?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it's so erotic. It seems more loving in a way, like not so much about sex.
Well, how about the one you just turned to? Where is his hand?
Down his pants.
Okay, You can go ahead and close that one right now. Mr. Robson, are you concerned about a man possessing these 7 books being in bed with a 12-year-old boy?
If it was a man I didn't know, maybe. But not Michael.
Is that because you view Mr. Jackson as being, for the most part, asexual?
No.
Because you believe that he doesn't really have a sexual interest?
I believe that he has a sexual interest in women.
Did you know that he possessed these magazines?
Objection, Your Honor, he didn't let the witness complete his answer.
Sustained.
Could the witness complete his answer, Your Honor?
Yes.
I believe that he has a sexual interest in women.
In women?
Yes.
These books don't suggest otherwise?
Not necessarily.
Alright, let's go to some other side of the counter. Exhibit number 575. Have you ever seen this magazine before?
No.
Not that specific one. A magazine of that nature?
Of that nature, yes.
Okay. And go ahead and turn through it. You can stop there. You don't need to go too much further. This magazine depicts naked women, or a woman in this case, inserting things inside of her. Is that right?
Yes.
You would consider this to be very graphic.
Yes.
In terms of sexually explicit material?
Yes.
Exhibit number 520, tell us the title of that.
Hard Rock Affair.
Okay. Go ahead and turn through a few pages. You don't have to turn any further. That magazine depicts graphic sexual pictures of a man and a woman engaged in acts of intercourse and oral sex. Is that right?
Yes.
You would consider this to be pretty much as hardcore as sexually graphic material goes. Is that right?
Objection. Misstates the evidence. 352.
I asked him what he considered.
Overruled. You may answer.
That's as hardcore as it goes. Is that what you asked?
Yes.
No, not as hardcore as it goes.
What could be more than that?
I've seen crazy things, crazy bondage things, all sorts of stuff.
You saw the bondage in the last publication, is that right?
Yeah, but they weren't really doing anything.
Alright, you would consider bondage to be at the height?
Yeah, when it gets into, really unusual stuff.
What's the title of this one? The magazine that we have here is 522.
Double Dicking Caroline.
Go ahead and turn a couple pages. Okay, that's fine. These are all photographs of a man and a woman engaged in pretty much anything a man and a woman can do. Is that right?
Yes.
Including acts of intercourse, acts of oral sex, and the picture right in front of you, acts of anal sex. Is that right?
Yes.
This you would consider to be fairly hardcore, would you not?
Yes.
The title of this one, please? Number 510.
Stiff Dick Lynn. Or, for Lynn, sorry.
For Lynn.
Stiff Dick for Lynn.
Let's get our prepositions right.
Get it right, yeah.
Go ahead and turn the page, if you would.
I never thought I'd have a room of people watching me do this.
That's enough. You would agree that this is a depiction of a man and a woman engaged in virtually every variation that a man and woman can do with one another. Is that right?
Yes.
Sexually. The collective material that you have just been shown does not cause you a moment of pause when you think about the prospect of this person who possesses all of this crawling into bed with a 10-year-old boy.
No.
And you would allow a child to crawl into bed with such a person?
If I knew the person, yes.
If you knew them?
Yes.
Your own child, you'd have no problem sleeping with a 35, 40-year-old man?
If I knew the person well, no.
No further questions.
Mr. Robson?
Yes.
That's your fiancé right there, correct?
Yes.
You are heterosexual, correct?
Yes.
You are a close friend of Michael, correct?
Yes.
By the way, did Michael Jackson ever? I'll ask from there. When you were a young child, did Michael Jackson ever show you any sexually explicit material?
No.
Did you ever see Michael Jackson show sexually explicit material to any child?
No.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, let me show you again exhibit number 841. Do you see that?
Yes.
And have you had a chance to flip through that book?
Yes.
Okay, Let me show you again exhibit number 596. It says, A Sexual Study of Man. Do you see that?
Yes.
Have you had a chance to flip through that book?
Yes.
Okay, and let me show you again exhibit number 842, A Boy. A photographic essay, okay? And that's the one with the inscription, To Michael, from your loving fan, Rhonda, okay?
Yes.
And have you had a chance to flip through that book?
Yes.
In fact, you see young children with rather innocent photographs of young boys, correct?
I'm going to object as leading, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Innocent photographs of young boys in various situations, right?
Yes.
Okay, you see a young boy hanging from a tree, right?
Yes.
You see a young boy sitting outside a door, right?
Yes.
See young boys on a beach, right?
Yes.
Okay, now, let's go quickly, to the material the prosecutor for the government showed you, okay? He showed you some magazines with heterosexual activity, correct?
Yes.
Okay, have you seen one book that depicts child pornography in that group?
No.
I believe there was a court restriction on the use of that word, Your Honor, one initiated by the defense. Unless that reservation is finished.
He's correct, and I made a mistake using the word. I'll withdraw it, and I apologize.
All right. The problem is that sometimes it's an appropriate word to use and sometimes it's not. But the jury's been instructed on it. And so if you want to rephrase it, that's fine.
Okay. In those books that the prosecutor for the government showed you, you see books about men, right?
Yes.
You see one book that says, A Study of Male Sexuality, and shows some sexual acts between men, correct?
Yes.
And he showed you a number of magazines involving sexual activity between men and women, correct?
Yes.
Okay, has he shown you one book involving children having sex?
No.
Has he shown you one book where a man is having sex with a child?
No.
The prosecutor tried to suggest that Mr. Jackson is asexual. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Do you believe he's asexual?
No.
Have you seen Mr. Jackson with women in your lifetime?
With what kind of woman? A woman that he's in a relationship with?
That he's been married to.
Yeah, with Lisa Marie.
When you were at Neverland, did you ever see anything that suggested pedophilia?
No.
Ever see any magazine or poster that suggested pedophilia?
Never.
No further questions.
Mr. Robson, when did you first learn that Michael Jackson possessed material of the nature that's before you right now?
Right now I did.
All the years that you have known Michael.
Actually, no one's told me where this came from.
Assuming this comes from Michael Jackson's residence.
Assuming it does, this is the first I know.
Alright, and you had never, ever known that Mr. Jackson collected sexually explicit material?
No.
This is something new that you're learning just today, is that right?
Yes.
You're telling us that this would have no effect at all on your belief that this bears on some suitability for him sleeping with 10-year-old boys?
No.
You knew that there were a succession of 10-year-old boys that he slept with, didn't you?
Objection. Misstates the evidence, the court ruling.
Sustained.
Did you know about other children that he had slept with?
No.
Never?
No.
Did you know that he was sleeping with Brett Barnes?
No.
Did you know that he was sleeping with Macaulay Culkin?
No.
Did you know that he was sleeping with Jordy Chandler?
No.
No further questions.
You actually saw kids sleeping in his room from time to time, correct?
Yeah, when he was present as well, yeah.
And Macaulay Culkin was there as well, correct?
Yeah.
Never saw anything inappropriate happen, right?
No.
Has anything this prosecutor for the government has said to you changed your opinion of Michael Jackson?
Not at all.
Does it change your opinion as to whether or not he ever did anything inappropriate with a child?
Not at all.
No further questions.
I have no questions.
Thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, may I remove the materials from the witness box?
Yes.
Oh, I'll get it for you.
When you get to the witness stand, please remain standing. Face the clerk over here and raise your right hand.
Yes.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
My whole name?
Yes, please.
Okay, it's Brett Christopher Barnes. BRETTCHRISTOPHER, BARNES.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnes, how old are you?
I'm 23 years old.
Where is your home?
Melbourne, Australia.
And what kind of work do you do?
Right now I'm unemployed. I actually had to quit my job to come here.
Okay, and what job is that?
I was a roulette dealer at the casino.
In Melbourne?
Yes.
Okay, do you know the fellow seated to my right at counsel table?
Absolutely.
Who is he?
It's my good friend Michael Jackson.
And you say your good friend. How long have you known him?
Since I was 5.
How did you meet him?
I was as big a fan as you can be at that age, of his, and he was in Melbourne for the Bad tour. And so my mum thought it would be a good idea for us to write a letter. My sister wrote the letter, but put it in my name as if I was writing the letter. And we went to meet him, see him at the airport when he touched down. And while we were there, we gave the letter to one of his dancers, and then we left the airport after it was all over. And I'm not sure exactly how much time passed, but after a little while, we received a phone call from him, and ever since then we've been really good friends.
And is he a friend of your family?
Absolutely.
Okay, have you ever visited Neverland Ranch?
Yes, I have.
When did you first visit Neverland Ranch?
It would have been December of '91.
And do you remember why you visited Neverland?
Because he was there, and it's his house, I guess.
Who did you go with?
My whole family went, my mother and my father and my sister and myself.
Did you stay at Neverland?
Yes, I did.
How many times do you think you visited Neverland?
Too many to remember. Probably, it would be 10 or more, even. More than 10 times.
And how many times do you think you've stayed over at Neverland?
Every time.
Okay, did you ever stay in Michael Jackson's room?
Yes, I have.
How many times do you think you've done that?
Countless as well.
And how would you describe his room?
It's big. It's pretty cool because it's got lots of fun stuff to do there. Video games, such as stuff like that. And it's probably the best as I can describe it.
Have you ever stayed in Michael Jackson's bed?
Yes, I have.
How many times do you think you have?
Countless as well.
Has Mr. Jackson ever molested you?
Absolutely not. And I can tell you right now that if he had, I wouldn't be here right now.
Has Mr. Jackson ever touched you in a sexual way?
Never. I wouldn't stand for it.
Has Mr. Jackson ever touched any part of your body in a way that you thought was inappropriate?
Never. It's not the type of thing that I would stand for.
When you stayed in Mr. Jackson's bed?
Uh-huh.
On any of those occasions, was anyone else there?
Yeah.
Who?
Well, I can't see, I was pretty young at the time, so I can't remember exactly. But I know my sister as being there, his cousins have been there. And, yeah, Macaulay has actually been there as well, Macaulay Culkin. So there's been a few people.
What is the longest period you think you've ever stayed at Neverland?
I couldn't tell you. I don't remember really.
Would it be a week, or 3 days?
Longer than that.
Longer than that?
Yeah, it would probably be a couple weeks, maybe a month at Neverland at one time.
And what do you recall doing at Neverland during the times you stayed there?
Playing arcade games, going ATV, motorbike riding around the property, going on amusement park rides, and watching plenty of movies, plenty of cartoons, eating very good food.
Do you consider Michael Jackson to be your family friend?
Absolutely.
Do you stay in communication with him?
Absolutely.
And how do you typically communicate with Michael Jackson?
Like he's a member of the family. Just always had warm conversations, reminisce about old times.
Are you familiar with a jacuzzi at Neverland?
Yeah.
Ever been in the jacuzzi?
Yes, I have.
Do you recall Michael Jackson ever being in the jacuzzi with you?
I don't recall. He possibly could have, but I don't really remember.
Do you recall ever taking a shower with Michael Jackson?
Never.
Now, have you visited Neverland without your parents being with you?
Yes.
And how many times do you think you've done that?
It wouldn't be that many. But I couldn't give you a ballpark figure even.
Now, have you followed this case in the media?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I chose not to.
Are you aware of any allegations being made that Mr. Jackson inappropriately touched you when you were with him?
Yes, I am. And I'm very mad about that.
You're mad about it?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's untrue, and they're putting my name through the dirt. And I'm really, really, really not happy about it.
No further questions.
Mr. Barnes, do you consider it disgraceful to having been molested?
Absolutely.
Alright, and why would it be a disgrace for somebody to have been molested?
Well, a child is.
Objection. This calls for speculation. Foundation.
Sustained.
How old were you when you first started sharing a bed with Michael Jackson?
Couldn't tell you. Don't really remember.
How old were you when you first started visiting Michael Jackson?
When I first started visiting, I was 9.
And you visited Neverland with whom?
With my parents.
Both your mother and your father?
And my sister as well.
Your sister as well. And how long did you stay at Neverland?
The first time?
Yes.
I don't exactly remember.
Did you stay over the week?
Yeah.
Did you then visit Neverland on a regular basis thereafter?
I wouldn't say regular, but yeah, it was quite frequent.
Did you visit Neverland at least once a year thereafter?
Yeah.
And when you visited Neverland, would you always stay with Michael Jackson?
Yeah, most of the time.
Alright, now, I asked you, I believe, the age the first time you went. Did you answer that question?
Yeah.
And you said what? About 9?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you would continue to go each year thereafter?
Yeah.
Did you sometimes go more than once a year?
Yeah.
And would you stay for longer than 1 week at a time?
Sometimes, I guess, yeah.
Were there occasions where you would stay 2 or even 3 weeks?
I was young at the time, so I don't really remember the time frames.
Okay.
So it would be purely speculation.
Would it have been summer vacation? That is, your summer vacation in Australia?
I really couldn't tell you.
Did you ever go to Neverland without a parent going with you?
Yes.
So sometimes you would fly all the way from Australia to Neverland, is that right, by yourself?
Absolutely.
Were you much older than 9 years old when you did that?
I couldn't tell you. But, well, right, yeah, I was older than 9.
Did you visit in your 10th year and your 11th year and your 12th year as well?
I really couldn't tell you that.
Did you ever visit in your 13th year and your 14th year?
I don't remember much about ages.
You can't tell us how old you were when you stopped visiting Neverland.
I continue to visit to this day.
Do you still sleep with Michael Jackson?
No, I don't.
How old were you when you stopped sleeping with Michael Jackson?
I couldn't tell you that.
Why don't you still sleep with Michael Jackson?
Well, he's got kids now.
And?
And it would be purely speculation if I told you. I could not answer that knowingly, like, it's just.
But during the years that you were visiting Michael Jackson at Neverland, you never stayed anyplace but in his room, is that correct?
I couldn't tell you.
You're telling us that you don't remember if you stayed in a guest lodge by yourself or with your mother or if you shared a bed with Michael Jackson.
I don't remember staying in the guest lodge by myself.
But it's true, sir, that you stayed virtually the entire time in his bedroom, is that right?
Yeah.
And during that time nobody else stayed in the bedroom with you other than you and Michael Jackson, is that true?
No, that's not true.
On what percentage of the occasions that you visited Michael Jackson was there somebody else staying in that room?
I couldn't tell you.
Can you tell us the names of the people who stayed in the room with you?
My sister, Macaulay Culkin. There was Lavon and Elijah. There was Frank, Eddie, and Dominic.
Was Frank
Prince as well.
Objection. He hasn't finished the question.
His son Prince as well.
Prince? Prince is how old now?
I'm not quite sure.
About what, 7?
Yeah, I guess so.
And how old was Prince when he stayed in the room with you and Michael Jackson?
I think he was 3.
Alright, so it was about 4 years ago?
Yeah.
So you stayed in the room with Michael Jackson when you were 18 years old?
Yeah.
You're 22 now?
23. 23.
So you were 19 years old?
Yeah, I guess.
Did you share a bed with him at that time?
Yeah, I did.
You did. Have you been sharing a bed with him consistently from age 9 until age 19?
What do you mean by consistent?
Well, in all the times that you visit, predominantly do you stay in his room, in his bed?
Yeah.
Did you do it when you were 10 years old as well?
Yeah.
Did you do it when you were 11 years old as well?
Yes.
Most of the times you did it, there was nobody else in the room, is that correct?
I guess you could say that.
Because Macaulay Culkin was only in the room with you once or twice, isn't that true?
I couldn't tell you how many times.
Could he have been in the room 20 or 30 times?
Probably not.
So really it's closer to once or twice, is that right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Alright, and your sister stayed there the first time you visited, is that right?
Not just the first time.
Did she stay there the second time?
Look, I don't really remember.
Did your sister share a bed with you and Michael Jackson ever?
I can't recall.
You can't recall if your sister shared a bed?
I can't remember.
When did your sister stop visiting Neverland?
She still visits to this day.
Does she still share a bed with you and Michael Jackson?
No.
When was the last time your sister shared a bed with you and Michael Jackson?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know the exact period of time.
Could you have been 15 or 16 years old?
I couldn't tell you.
Could you have been 10?
I couldn't tell.
Mr. Barnes, the best you can tell us about when your sister last shared a bed with you and Michael Jackson, you have no idea?
It's not something that I think of. Why would I try and remember that?
Is there?
Why would I think about it?
Is there any other 35-year-old man that you slept with when you were 10 years old besides Michael Jackson?
Yes.
Who?
My uncle.
Alright, a family member.
Yeah.
Who else?
That would probably be it. I can't recall any others.
Alright, now, with whom do you live at this time?
My parents and my sister.
And both your parents?
Yeah.
And that's in Australia?
Yes.
Alright, did your father ever visit Neverland with you?
Yes, he did.
When your father visited Neverland with you, where did you stay?
Both in the guest house and both with him.
Both in the guest house and with Mr. Jackson?
I stayed with Mr. Jackson, yeah.
Did you ever have a conversation with your father about the propriety of sharing a bed with a 35-year-old man?
Not that I recall.
Did you ever have a conversation with your mother about that, whether that was a wise thing to do, to share a bed with a 35-year-old man?
Not that I recall.
Did he ever show you any sexually explicit material?
Absolutely not.
Objection. Beyond the scope.
Overruled. The answer is absolutely not.
Were you aware that he possessed sexually explicit material?
No.
Did you ever travel with Michael Jackson anywhere?
Yes, I did.
Where?
South America, North America, Africa, and Europe.
On those occasions.
And Australia as well, I'm sorry.
On those occasions, did you share a bed with him?
Yes.
Were any other people present while you were in the room with him?
I don't recall. I can't remember.
Was your mother with you when you traveled through South America?
I think so.
You think so?
Look, when I was young, I wasn't really thinking about this sort of stuff. I wasn't trying to retain in my memory this sort of stuff. And what's sad is that I traveled to all these countries and I really don't remember much of them. So it's all sort of meshed into one.
Mr. Barnes, how old were you when you traveled through South America with Mr. Jackson?
To tell the truth, I cannot remember.
You can't tell whether you were 19 or 10.
Well, I wasn't 19. It was in my middle teens, maybe. No, it would have been in my early teens.
12?
It could have been possibly 12.
So you were 12 or 13. You don't know if your mother was there with you when you traveled through South America?
She was, actually.
In fact, you traveled quite a bit with Mr. Jackson without your mother being present. Isn't that true?
No.
Did you travel through North America with Mr. Jackson without your mother?
Yes.
And in how many cities through North America did you go without your mother and Mr. Jackson?
I'm not too sure.
6 or 7, perhaps 8?
I couldn't tell you.
Was he performing at the time, Mr. Jackson?
For which?
On the trip through North America, was he performing?
No, he wasn't.
Did you travel with him when he was performing?
Yes.
Was that, in South America, was he performing then?
Yes.
And every night after the performance, you would go with him to his room, is that correct?
Yes.
And you stayed in his bed that night?
Yep.
In North America when you traveled, your mother was not there?
Not well, see, she went to some cities, like we all went to some cities, and sometimes I went. Like on some of the occasions when I was gone, coming over here alone, we'd go around. But sometimes when my whole family was there, we'd go around, too.
How many times did you come to the United States by yourself?
Probably only 2 or 3 maybe.
And did Mr. Jackson arrange for that to happen?
He arranged for all of our trips.
So all of the transportation for you and your family from Australia to Neverland, is that correct?
Yeah.
And then all the travels that you did through the United States and through South America?
Aha. I was very fortunate.
I'm sorry?
I was very fortunate.
When you slept with Mr. Jackson, what generally did you wear?
Sorry?
When you slept with Mr. Jackson in the same bed, what would you wear?
Pajama pants, t-shirt, pajama top sometimes.
Always?
Well, always pajama pants, always a t-shirt.
And Mr. Jackson?
Exactly the same thing.
Always pajamas and pajama bottoms?
Aha.
I'd like to show you a series of photographs and tell me if you recognize them, the people in this photo. Let's start with 893.
Yep.
Who's that?
That's me and him.
Are these Polaroids?
They look so.
Do you remember taking these pictures?
Not at all.
Do you remember where you were?
Not at all.
Can you tell us about how old you were?
Probably about 11 maybe, 10.
I notice you've changed your hairstyle since then, haven't you?
Yes.
You were about 9 or 10. So this was early on in your meeting with Mr. Jackson, is that right?
Yeah, I would say so.
Alright. This is 893, and that has 2 photos on the front, and 2 photos on the back, is that right?
Yep.
And that's you in the 2 photos in the back as well?
Yep.
Alright. 892, is that you as well?
Yep.
And Mr. Jackson?
Yep, yep.
And the 2 on the back? Do these appear to have been taken at the same time?
These?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say so.
891, who is that?
That's Michael Jackson.
Did you take those pictures?
Couldn't tell you.
They appear to have been taken at the same time, no?
Possibly.
Alright, if I were to tell you that they were all found together, would that suggest that they were all taken at the same time?
Objection. Calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Turn it over, if you would, to the backside. 3 more pictures on the back. What are they?
Of Michael Jackson.
Do you remember those pictures?
Not at all.
Does that look familiar to you?
No.
Mr. Barnes, did you take those photographs?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you, no.
890, 2 pictures on the front. Would you take a look at those 2 pictures?
Aha.
One of those is you, is that right?
Yes, it is.
You appear to be in bed.
Aha.
The other picture is what?
Appears to be Michael Jackson.
And he's in his underwear, is that right?
Yes, it is.
889, is that you?
Yes, it is.
And anything on the back?
Yep.
Is that you as well?
Yes, it is.
Alright, do you remember those pictures?
Don't remember taking them, but I can tell you where they were taken.
Where?
They were taken at the ranch.
They were taken at the ranch?
In a photo booth.
There's a photo booth at the ranch on that one there?
Yep.
Do you recognize the background on any of the other photographs?
On these?
Yes.
No, I don't. No.
Are all of these photographs accurate photographs of the subjects depicted within? In other words, the photographs of Mr. Jackson really are Mr. Jackson and the photographs of you really are you?
That one's a bit sketchy, but the rest, yeah.
The one in his underwear?
Yeah.
You're not sure that's him?
Well, you can't really see the face properly.
Mr. Barnes, before coming from Australia, did you speak with anybody about your testimony?
No.
They simply flew you from Australia to California?
Well, they explained that I'd be a witness.
And then they interviewed you after you got here?
The interview?
Yes. You had an interview with an investigator.
Yes.
Who works for Mr. Mesereau, is that right?
Yes.
And that interview took place after you got to California?
Yes, it did.
So they had no way of knowing what you were going to say while you were still in Australia?
No.
Because they never talked with you at all?
Not about the case, not being a witness. I signed a declaration.
You signed a declaration from where?
I was at home. Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne, Australia?
Yeah.
Alright, so somebody wrote a declaration and they sent it to you, is that right, in Australia?
Faxed it.
I'm sorry?
Faxed it.
They faxed it you. But you had to have talked to somebody to tell them what to put in the declaration, didn't you do that?
Yes, I did.
So you did talk with somebody while you were in Australia?
Yes.
Who was the person that you talked with while you were in Australia?
It was Brian Oxman and I think it might be Scott Ross as well. But I'm not exactly sure.
And then they prepared a declaration, they sent it to you, is that correct?
That's correct.
Madam Clerk, could I have another sticker that says, "Let me show you 894, 4 photographs on it."
Excuse me, counsel. Are these what I saw before? Are these what you showed me earlier?
Not the first set. Let me show you. 893, would you take a look at that, please, both sides of that?
Yep.
That contains a total of 6 pictures, 2 on one side, 4 on the back, is that right?
That's correct.
And those are all pictures of you, 1 picture of Mr. Jackson?
Correct.
894?
Aha.
That's who?
Michael Jackson.
All 4 of those pictures?
Correct.
Do you recognize the location?
No, I don't.
You have no recollection of that?
No.
Could that have been a hotel you stayed in?
Quite possibly.
Alright, 896?
Aha.
Does any of that look familiar to you?
Is this New York? I don't remember any of these pictures.
Do you remember any of those pictures being taken?
Not at all.
And your age, approximately, in those photographs?
I would have absolutely no idea.
You would have no idea at all?
Well, these ones of me?
Yes. You.
Probably about the same age.
Okay. Does it appear that those photographs were taken about the same time?
Purely speculation, but yes.
Is your hairstyle the same as?
Objection. Move to strike.
Stricken. Speculation.
Based on your familiarity with yourself, does it appear that you are about the same age in each of the photographs so far shown to you?
Yes.
And all those photographs are you with Michael Jackson in a room someplace, is that right?
Yes.
You have no recollection of when those photographs were taken?
Absolutely not.
And the pictures of Mr. Jackson, you have no recollection of actually taking those yourself?
Absolutely not.
Were there many occasions, when you were 10 years old, that you traveled by yourself with Mr. Jackson?
I wouldn't say, well, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Did you travel more than one trip with Mr. Jackson when you were about the age of 10 by yourself?
Do you mean from my home?
Yes.
Around? I can't really remember. I can't remember how many times. It might have been 1, might have been 2. I can't really tell you.
On the occasions when you traveled with Mr. Jackson and he was on tour, did you go to all of the concerts?
I'm not sure.
Was there ever a woman traveling with Mr. Jackson while you were traveling with him?
A woman?
Yes.
I'm not. What do you mean, though?
Somebody with whom he was close to. I don't mean an assistant. I mean a friend or a girlfriend.
Not that I recall.
At the time that you were traveling with him in South America, was he ever traveling with a woman? And I don't mean an assistant. A girlfriend.
Object as beyond the scope.
Sustained.
Were there ever any other people traveling with you as part of your unit?
Where?
When you traveled.
Sometimes.
Did any of them sleep in the same room with you and Mr. Jackson?
I can't really recall. I don't remember.
Did anyone ever share a bed with you and Mr. Jackson, where there were 3 of you in the same bed together?
Can't really remember.
Did your sister ever sleep with you in the same bed and Mr. Jackson?
Unfortunately, I can't really remember that either.
Do you know Wade Robson?
Yes.
How well do you know Wade Robson?
Not very.
Have you kept up some kind of friendship with Mr. Robson?
Nope.
Is that a no?
That's a no.
When was the last time you spoke with Mr. Robson?
Today.
Alright, today you saw him. When was the last time prior to today?
Yesterday.
Okay, so you've been staying at Neverland, have you?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to talk with Mr. Robson?
I had an opportunity, yeah.
And did you speak with Mr. Robson?
Yes.
Did you discuss your testimony?
Absolutely not.
And why not?
Because it was explained to us that we were not allowed to.
Who was that who told you that?
The lawyers did.
Did they say why you weren't allowed to?
Isn't it against the law?
Is that what they told you, it was illegal to talk with each other?
No, they didn't. They just explained that it wasn't. They just said, don't talk about the case.
Were you aware of Wade Robson spending long periods of time with Michael Jackson?
Objection. Beyond the scope. Relevance.
Sustained.
Did Michael Jackson ever speak to you about other boys who spent nights with him in his room?
Objection. Beyond the scope. Relevance. Foundation.
Sustained.
Did you ever talk with Michael Jackson about the propriety of sharing a bed with him?
Objection. Beyond the scope. Foundation, and relevance.
Overruled.
Go ahead and answer the question.
Not that I recall.
At no time did you ever have a conversation with Michael Jackson where the subject of the conversation was whether or not you should be sharing a bed with him.
Not that I recall.
Did he ever tell you that you were like family to him?
All the time.
All the time. Did he ever tell you that you should trust him?
Yeah.
Did he ever tell you that he was like a father to you?
He may have, yes.
Did he ever tell you that he considered you to be like a son to him?
Yes.
Was that something he frequently said to you?
Not frequently.
Was that something that he frequently said to you during the early stages of your relationship when you were about age 8?
Never met him when I was age 8.
You were about 9?
Yeah.
Okay, so how long after you had begun visiting Neverland did Mr. Jackson speak to you in such terms? Tell you were like family to him or like a son to him?
I couldn't tell you.
Did he ever have a conversation with your mother of that nature? Tell your mother that he considered her to be like family to him as well?
Wouldn't have a clue.
That was never done in your presence?
Possibly. I don't remember.
Did your mother ever have a conversation with him about anything in your presence?
Quite possibly.
Is it the case that when you were kids and running around Neverland, on occasion you would get fairly rowdy?
Nope.
You were always fairly well disciplined and behaved?
I was brought up right.
How about the other kids who were at Neverland while you were there?
As far as I remember, yeah, we were all pretty, there were a couple maybe, but I never really saw an outbreak.
You never saw what?
An outbreak.
An outbreak? Who were the other boys who were there about the time that you were there?
I saw Mac there, Macaulay Culkin. His, Lavon and Elijah. Frank, Eddie, Dominic.
How old was Frank at the time?
Objection. He hasn't finished his answer yet, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Go ahead.
Aldo. Marie Nicole. My sister, of course. That's all I really remember.
Of the ones that you've mentioned, how many of them shared Michael Jackson's bedroom while you were there?
All of them have.
Did all of them?
I'm pretty sure.
On how many nights do you think, all at the same time?
Not at the same time, because like one trip we saw Mac, and the other trips we saw everyone else.
And would they share the same bed with you and Mr. Jackson?
I can't honestly recall that.
Do you remember any of those people who you just mentioned sharing a bed with Mr. Jackson in your presence?
Yeah.
Who?
Mac.
Macaulay Culkin?
Yeah.
Who else?
Frank.
Frank Cassio?
Yeah.
How old was Frank Cassio at the time?
Objection. He hasn't finished his answer yet.
Eddie.
I can't tell if he has or not. Have you finished your answer?
No, I haven't.
Go ahead.
Eddie. That's all I can recall.
Eddie is Eddie who?
Cascio.
That's Frank's brother?
Yeah.
How old was Frank at that time?
Wouldn't be able to tell you.
Well, was he a child?
I never knew him as a child. He's older than me, so.
You only know Frank Cassio as an adult?
No. He's like a year older, 2 years older than me.
You said you never knew him as a child?
Well, as a child, I consider to be under the age of 10.
How about as a young teenager?
Yeah.
So you saw him there as a young teenager?
Yeah.
Would he share Michael Jackson's bed as well?
If I recall correctly, yeah.
And Eddie, how old was Eddie during that time?
Like it would have been a young teenager as well.
What's the longest period of time that any of those people stayed in Michael Jackson's room while you were there? In other words, how many consecutive days did that happen?
Can't recall properly.
Did Michael Jackson ever tell you that he loved you?
Yeah, all the time.
Did he ever touch you?
In what manner?
Did he ever kiss you?
On the cheek, on the forehead, yeah.
Often?
I wouldn't say often, but yeah. I can't really remember these things. It's not something that I would try to remember.
I have no further questions.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. I think we'll start the next witness tomorrow. To the jury, I'll see you tomorrow at 8:30. Remember the admonition. Have a good evening.